let's see. Since we're among New Yorkers, I used to live here. I want to start by sharing a little anecdote. When I worked at this cool startup where I was doing marketing, we went through some very intense managerial changes. So the new CEO comes up and asked me out for lunch. So I said, sure. So he takes me downstairs to this very, very cheap restaurant. And by cheap, I mean like not delicious. And as we're sitting down, he says, Sandira, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we just raised $8 million. The bad news is you're going to have to look for another job. Well, I'm 25 then. I worked since I'm 16. And I'm thinking, wow, this is the first time I have both time and money. What could I do with this at the same time, really? So I could either look for another job, which is a very rational thing to do, or I could do something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life. So a few weeks later, I'm on a train ride from Moscow to Siberia and then to Mongolia, which was one of my dream on my bucket list. So that gives me a lot of time to think. It's a few days of a train ride, and I'm thinking about where I'm heading, but mostly, how did I get here in the first place? So let's backtrack a little. Here I am. I was born in Paris. I grew up in the Loire Valley in a very tiny town, from a French dad and an Indian mother. My dad was a hippie from his Nanterre days, very proud of it, a sci-fi fan as well. Fan of Star Wars. I mean, when they saw the movie, they decided to call my sisters Leia. So for the longest time, you could find me introducing myself as Luke Skywalker. Moving on. So I wasn't sure what, so I grew up in this, small town, and something happened when I turned around 11. So my dad, first of all, the family business was psychic. So it had been done for generations. My grandmother was an astrologer, and he was a tarot card reader, among other things. But so when I was 11, the French IRS started to come and knock on our door pretty regularly. And so that's pretty much when I decided I would never start a business in France. Sorry, I'm sure it's changed now. But also, it gave me a yearning to become financially independent. My family suddenly, we didn't have that much money. Their marriage started to be affected by the stress, and to smoothen the transition, my mother decided to take us on to this wonderful trip throughout India. So for 9 months. So I was homeschooled with my sister, and we traveled. And it was amazing to see, like Guillaume mentioned, cows, dust, alongside people working on the internet, connected all the way to Silicon Valley. That's when I realized, the power of technology to connect people across the world, and globalization as well. So I come back pretty changed by that experience. I decided I'm not going to reintegrate the regular, school system. In the absence of a Stanford in my region, I decided to hack my education by continuing homeschooling. My sister went back to regular school, by the way, so it was, different path. And so as I'm doing that, so my program basically in the morning, I start by following my courses, you send them by mail, etc. In the afternoon, I taught myself how to code, and I would make websites. And because I was yearning for a connection, I was also hanging out with all the kids from all these schools in my town. So that's pretty much how I lived for a while. But my town became pretty small for, I guess, the size of my ambition. I looked around. At that point, I knew I wanted to do something with technology. My dad had asked me, if I wanted to become a psychic, and I was like, no, I don't want to be a, hippie bohemian like you, and no way. I want to wear a suit and be in the Matrix. So I looked around, but I had no idea what to do. Around me, as far as female role models, I mean, I didn't see anyone I could relate to. I mean, most women I could look into at that point were either wife of, or daughter of, or mistress of. And I thought there had to be a different business model out there. So I basically left for London. And on my way out, I explained to some elders in my town, this is what I'm going to do, my plan, my strategy. And they basically said, well, Sandira, you really have too many dreams, you might fail. So armed with that boost of confidence, I arrived in London. I tried to be a waitress first, but I was really shy, and my English was not really that good. So that was a fail. So the next thing I tried was to be an au pair, and I'm like, one day I'd like to have kids on my own. I might as well train on other people's children. Any parents in there? So when the kids were at school, I would go knock on doors of various companies that I identified, asking them for work. That was also a fail. Like after 100 no's, I kind of got discouraged. So I took a little break, and then I went back out there with a different strategy this time. I pretended I worked for this company, which actually was mine. And the whole point of this scheme was to not have to say my age, because I really wanted to get paid like normal people do. So I go, I pitch, and initially it was like, I can make websites, whatever you need. And after a while, I actually end up signing my first deal, and then my second. Turns out, actually, I pivoted into an SEO company, an SEO agency. And then I signed this organization called Scotland Yard. So that's what I've been doing, and that's pretty much how I launched my career. After that, I actually moved back to Paris. I worked for a startup over there. We were like two out of 100 women. It was an amazing adventure. It felt like being part of a Star Trek ship. But in order to get that job, I remember I sat down and for the interview, the guy asked me, how old are you? I mean, at that time, I was, by the way, 18. When I was in London, I was 16. So, and I looked like 14 when I mean. So he's asking, how old are you? And I said, well, it's not polite to ask a lady her age. A few weeks later, we signed the deal. And that's how I got here.
Thank you, Sandira.